All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome today. So glad to have you along. Hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for WSI's webinar ChatGPT 101, Work Smarter, Not Harder. My name is Mark Keady, and today we're going to get you up to speed on ChatGPT, whether you've used it a couple of times for rewriting emails, or maybe you're using it every day for various tasks, or maybe you've never even used it before. No matter what your level is today, you're going to get something out of this 45-minute webinar. So we're going to move kind of fast. So if you have questions, I would invite you to hang on to those, and we're going to have a little bit of time towards the end of the webinar today for you to ask those questions, and we'll dive into them as far as we can get. So that being said, again, welcome, and let's jump in. So let's talk about a scenario, right? Maybe you get a document handed to you a couple days ago. It's been sitting on your desk. You didn't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, can you give a presentation on that big economic report we gave you yesterday? Can you do that maybe like, I don't know, in 10 minutes?" Well, thanks to ChatGPT, we can actually accomplish this. If you think even just a year and a half ago, this was a task that you'd be like, it's not going to happen, or it would be a disaster. Maybe you'd have to pull an all-nighter to make this happen. But the fact is, you have 10 minutes thanks to something as cool as ChatGPT, we can find a way to make that happen. So before we dive into this task today, and we're going to do this as our big example throughout the day as we teach you about prompt engineering and ChatGPT, we're going to come back to this in just a moment. First, though, I want to introduce myself. My name is Mark Keady from WSI. I work in creative content in our marketing department. Also, I've been working for about a year and a half now with AI integration here at WSI, teaching our WSI employees and team members how to use ChatGPT and finding all kinds of new ways, including building tools that help us accomplish everyday tasks. I'm based out of our corporate office, and sometimes I work in Kalamazoo, sometimes I'm in Battle Creek. So either way, we're really excited to have you with us today. Let's talk about some of the things that we're going to go through, which first is the basics, how to get ChatGPT, what ChatGPT is, what generative AI is, and really by the end of it, kind of explaining the mystery of how it all works. And so if you're somebody who's used it and kind of been a little weirded out by what it can do, the cool thing is today you're actually going to understand how it works. The next exciting thing, of course, is prompt engineering. This is basically a fancy way to say question asker of ChatGPT, but there's a way to structure your questions or your prompt to be able to get the most out of ChatGPT. And a lot of it requires thinking like AI. So we're going to teach you how to do that today. Also show you why the paid version of ChatGPT is worth the $20 a month, whether you use it professionally or you use it personally. And on top of that, we're going to build a GPT tool, talk about some of these GPT tools that I just mentioned a few minutes ago that can simplify everyday tasks. So that being said, we'll finish up with a question and answer session, but let's jump in. First of all, if you don't know what ChatGPT is, it's a web program. You log on to this website right here, chat.openai.com, and you can get a free ChatGPT account and start using it right away. OpenAI is the company that has invented ChatGPT. And the free version you're going to get when you set up your account at chat.openai.com is going to give you access to the 3.5 model, which is a very, very robust AI model that's going to give you the ability to work with text in a variety of different ways. And you also even have some access to the newer models as well, which we call 4.0, 4.0, and 0.1. There's a lot of things to confuse with that, but we'll talk about some of those models as well. Plus, paid users, if you're paying that $20 a month, you get access to the brand new 0.1 model, which just came out maybe a little over a week ago. They call it maybe 2 weeks ago, they call it the thinking model, and it sits there for 20, 30 seconds and really tries to mimic human thought and be a little bit more detailed. So you even get a little bit of access to that with the free accounts. But the paid models are really great because you get unlimited access to a lot of these programs through ChatGPT. So that being said, we've explained kind of what it is. Now, what does it do? ChatGPT is a program that produces what's called generative AI. And generative AI sounds kind of complicated or a little futuristic, but really all it is anything that's created that's brand new from the program, whether it's new text, blogs, books, sounds, documents, images, all of these things created from existing data to create something new is called generative AI. And that's a term that you're going to be hearing a lot more of as AI starts to kind of make its way into our lives on an everyday basis. So the basics of this is kind of the part where I explain how it works, is GPT and similar models are called LLMs. And an LLM is a large language model. And I like to think of it as maybe like a Walmart, right? Where everything under the sun is completely in there that's ever been known. It's all in there. And somehow you still come out with hopefully what you're needing. And so a large language model is trained with books and is trained with newspapers and websites and so much other content, all kind of crammed into that big LLM. And these are massive, massive databases of words that are strung together. And essentially, this is what ChatGPT references when you make a query into the program. It goes back and looks at all of everything it has and mathematically kind of figures it out. So let's say you typed into ChatGPT, give me a great recipe for hummus. Well, it's not going to weigh great or give me so much as it's going to weigh the words recipe and hummus, right? Give more weight and more focus to those words. And essentially, no matter how long your query is, it mathematically weighs those words, determines some probability, and weighs it against the LLM, all that information it knows, and it spits out the answer to you, which is pretty cool. And it does it with pretty good, astonishing accuracy with that. And the other thing besides the LLM is something called deep learning, and this is the other term you're going to hear along with generative AI. These are kind of the ways that this thing got invented. Essentially, the machine just sits there and looks at all the information it has and continues to learn on its own the patterns that these words all form. And so, like I said, simply said, GPT is only trying to guess its next word, and it does so with astonishing accuracy. Kind of a neat little trick. So it's not some sorcerer, it's not some weird man behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. It's just simply math and referencing it against a large database of words. So today we're going to jump into prompt engineering. And like I said earlier, prompt engineering is sort of like a fancy term for question asker. And that being said, it is the secret sauce to really getting what you want out of ChatGPT and other large language models. So think of it, I would say, think of these models as like an eager assistant, somebody who's willing to do everything under the sun for you, but you kind of still have to explain everything to them in detail to get them to sort of figure out what you're trying to do until it gets into a groove of knowing what you like. Or you can also kind of look at it if you have children. Sometimes, you ask your 2-year-old or 3-year-old to perform a task, and you might need a little bit of guidance when it comes along to that. So that being said, those are good ways to sort of look at ChatGPT. If you don't give it the right information to make its decision and to do the task, it's going to have a hard time giving you exactly what you want. Some people ask me what's the difference between ChatGPT and Google, and I always try to compare it as like Google is sort of like the librarian. If you walk into a library, Google is like the Dewey Decimal System for old school people who might be on this call, or a librarian who finds the books for you and then says, "Here, read it yourself." Whereas ChatGPT is sort of like the rich, expensive tutor your super wealthy father bought for you to just do your homework while you're away at private school. You say, "I need a report done on 16th century, cultures of Latin America," and ta-da, we know we're on our way. So kind of a different way to make sure you're thinking of these in different terms. But a lot of these are starting to do some sort of the same thing. So like I said, a good way to sort of learn what this is at its whole and why prompt engineering is so important. So today we're going to talk about the elements of prompt engineering. And there are 5 main elements and then kind of a 6th part that sort of comes in round 2. And we're going to kind of jump into these in detail today. And the first one is identity, task, output, parameters, and examples. And so these 5 elements of creating a great prompt are going to make ChatGPT work for you so much better if you haven't quite got it to do exactly what you want. So starting with our first one, identity, right? This is the role. And the big thing you want to do is take this huge warehouse of information for ChatGPT, and you want it to sort of simplify and start focusing down on what it is you need. Maybe you need a doctor, maybe you need a lawyer, maybe you need somebody who's got experience in building bridges, whatever the case may be. You need to give ChatGPT that identity so it can start to wheel down its information. That's the identity part of our prompt. The next part is task. We need to tell the LLM, the large language model, or ChatGPT, we need to tell it specifically what it is we want generated for us. So that's the next thing that needs to be in our prompt. The next thing is output and format. In addition to giving it a task and telling it what to do, we need to also tell it how we want our results to come back to us. And there's many different ways. It can include voice, it can include whether you want it in a table, whether you want it in an image, whether you want multiple things to come back at you at once, if you want the model to do several different tasks all in one. These are all sort of the moments and the parts of format and output. And we'll talk a little bit more about these in just a moment. The next one is one that a lot of people forget to put in their prompts, even professional prompters and people who've been spending a lot of time in ChatGPT. And this is one that I find to be really one of the most effective ways to create a great prompt. And that is a golden example. You can tell, anybody in the world what it is you want and how you want it, but if you show them exactly what it should look like when it comes back, a lot of times people are able to accomplish that task for you in the first try. And ChatGPT is no exception when it comes to that. So being able to provide it a golden example, say, I want my table output like this, or I want it written in the style of this, or this is how many words, things like that. These are all part of the golden example, showing it what you want. And finally, we kind of just alluded to it as well, parameters. Parameters is a fancy way to say rules. And we want to make sure we give ChatGPT the rules that we want our output to come through. So maybe we want it to be 500 words. Maybe we, want it to be in French. Whatever these kind of things are, parameters can also kind of work with output and format a little bit, but they work hand in hand because you're using parameters to help set your format. So these are the 5 elements of a great prompt, and we're going to dive into each one of them here over the next couple of minutes. And so as we jump in, role, as we talked about, your role as a chief operations officer in manufacturing with a specialty in public relations and a visionary mindset. So already we've told ChatGPT, listen, we're going to need you to start studying all the knowledge you know about CEOs and being a visionary and understanding manufacturing. So all of a sudden, all the knowledge that it does say, I don't need to know anything about cross-country skiing. Gets that out of its probability factoring. And so giving it a role or identity is going to help you get some of that expertise that is sitting out there. The task, like we talked about, what do you need? I need you to analyze this spreadsheet. I need you to create an image. I need you to write an email. Proofread this copy. What do you need ChatGPT to do? And of course, back to that third thing, the output, the format. This is the details of what we want. I need a 5-table column, with column 1 being the business, column 2 being the phone number, column 3 being the address, column 4 being a website, right? So you have to give it those examples on your output so that it knows how to produce it. Or you could also use a golden example and say, this is how I want my output. Maybe it's already pasted in there for you. So again, giving it specifics on your output and format is always going to help you get the most out of ChatGPT the first time. And then, of course, the golden example we just talked about, giving an example or two to show you how you want your output performed, and give it the parameters. Don't use corporate speak. I find myself doing that all the time, or don't use typical cliche GPT language. I think some of us who've used ChatGPT are good at using our eyeballs now, kind of looking at copy going, I don't know if this has quite the heart or personality of a human being. And so we get a little suspicious sometimes. And so there are ways to continue to massage your output so that, it starts to sound a little bit more like you, starts to sound a little bit more human, which I think is the big goal when it comes to AI as a whole. And finally, this is one we haven't really talked about, and I don't consider it part of the prompt engineering. I kind of consider it the afterglow. Once you get your result back, using fine tuning, which means what was your result about? How can we fine tune our prompt to get exactly the results we want? That's sort of that last step if you need to move a little bit further into your prompting or get a few more tries out of it, a few more drafts out of ChatGPT. So again, identity role, this is going to narrow that window of information that ChatGPT has to search through to get a response. The task, telling ChatGPT what you want to generate. Output and format, giving it specifics on how you want the generative AI to give you your results. Examples, obviously showing exactly what you want. You can also, add text or images to create a unique voice. And finally, those parameters, again, to establish the rules for output and to reduce the number of times you'll need to prompt. Also for token reduction as well. We didn't talk about tokens much when we were explaining what large language models and deep learning are, but all those patterns of words that we know in life and how they kind of fit together, essentially they're called tokens inside the GPT world. And while we think even a free account for us on ChatGPT is not costing anything, there are real hard cash computing costs that come with using AI, because the math required is so in depth that that's why you might be reading about, they're buying huge plots of land in Texas and all over the country to just start putting storage facilities for data servers just to be able to manage AI. So it does use a lot of energy, and the newer models you use, sometimes they reduce their energy consumptions, but either way, putting in your response and getting back your response is actually a cash cost. If you have a free account, you're never going to pay a penny. Never worry about that. But there are restrictions. You may run into some things where it says ChatGPT is busy, or if you're using a paid subscription, you might run out of some of the premium features after a little while. So that just kind of gives you an idea that there actually is real cash computing costs whenever you use something like ChatGPT. So here we are. Now that we've understood how to prompt and how to ask the right questions, we're going to go through an exercise here when it comes to creating a full prompt. And we're going to do this as now prompt engineers. All right. So somebody who's never used ChatGPT or is pretty new with it might say, what was our task again? We have just a few minutes to prepare a presentation for an entire board. And we just got the paper yesterday, and it's coming up in 10 minutes. So we're going to use what we've just learned in detail, and we're going to create a really cool prompt that hopefully gets us the results we want. Before we do, let's take a look at our document. I'm going to bump out of our presentation for just a second here. And I want to show you that we have, this is our document that we're going to use here. Let me see if I can move this over to my second screen. There we go. So this is the Michigan Economic Outlook for 2024-26. And it just looks like a barn burner of a read. Lots and lots of words and charts. Oh, calm me down. This is amazing information. Unfortunately, if you had to glom through this and try to produce a report and everything that would come with this into a 5-minute speech, who knows how long this could take. So that being said, we're going to take that document and we're going to create a 5-minute speech out of it. But let's jump into first how we want to work through our prompts. So again, we've got 10 minutes to come up with this. We're going to use ChatGPT to make it work. So this coming from a pseudo professional prompter, somebody who's been doing this for a while. And even if you go online and you look at some of the great AI prompt engineers in America and across the world, this is kind of how their prompts are going to look. So I know it's a little thick. I know there's a lot to it, but we're going to break it down and explain to you all those elements of the prompt and where they fit into this and how it's going to give us our results. So let's take a look at crafting a prompt with our knowledge. As a novice professional speaker who can simplify ideas and presentations, transcribe and analyze this white paper, produce a 5-minute speech outline, focus on executive summary for an audience of board members for XYZ blow molding company in West Michigan. Include vital statistics and begin with the most important details. And of course, I'm a big filmmaker, storyteller. I love to always tell stories and structure. So open with a story, something humorous that maybe helps draw them into the presentation, and design a slide deck as well to accompany the speech. Speak in a casual style, as if George Clooney from Ocean's 11 was presenting. Just cool, calm demeanor, a little quirky, a little wily on the underside, but without alluding to that as your inspiration. Don't use corporate cliche terms. I talked about that one. And the goal is to strike a little fear into this audience while showing vision and confidence. We want this in a 3-act structure. We want the first act to be setting up the story, the second act to be the complications, and the third act to be how we win and succeed, just like any movie or television show you watch. 1, 2, 3, and a 3-act structure. And so this is the prompt that we're going to put into ChatGPT here in just a few moments with that white paper that I just showed you, that barn burner of a read for the Michigan Economic Report. And once we go through all that, see what we can get out of it using this super prompt or this properly engineered prompt, so to speak. And then we'll try to do the same thing using what we call a 0-shot prompt, which is basically just saying, write me a speech. So we're going to jump into those, each one of those examples. But the first one we want to talk about is our super prompt right here. And I'm going to show you how it breaks down. So each one of these things highlighted represents one of those 5 or 6 things that we talked about at the beginning, those 5 examples, right? So when we're highlighted in green, we're talking about the role we want ChatGPT to be. We're talking about the tasks in red. We need to transcribe and analyze. We need to produce a speech. Our outputs in gold, we need an executive summary. We need it to be 5 minutes. We wanted to make sure you open with a story, include statistics, speak in a casual style, present in a 3-act structure, all part of how we want our output. And then examples, kind of right there with the blue, right? We want the first act, the second act, and the third act. We tell it how we want it to go, and we want it to kind of sound like George Clooney from Ocean's 11. We don't need to necessarily paste in some casual dialogue. Chances are ChatGPT will go and figure that out for us based on its vast information and knowledge and how that movie and transcription went. And so these are all the things, and then you can see there in the purple we have parameters as well. So we want to make sure our ideas are simple. We want to start with the most important details. We want no corporate cliche terms. We want to make sure we're showing vision and confidence. So we're setting in some rules, some examples, how we want our output. All those three kind of things tie together a lot to make sure that we're getting the proper response. So this is our prompt. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bump out of our slideshow for just a second, and I'm going to head over to good old ChatGPT. Now, as you'll see here in ChatGPT, I have a version up here at the top called 4.0, and this is it's great. It's a great model. It's been out for probably about 3 or 4 months now. It does a lot of great things and does them all together. This new one over here, 0.1 preview, this is the one I was just talking about, thinking GPT, and this one's really good for more complex thinking and nuanced, ideas to come out of ChatGPT. And then get some of these other options as well, more models. There's our ChatGPT 4. So this is all with the paid subscription, obviously. When you get on with a free subscription, if you have a free subscription, you'll see this being 3.5, and you'll have some limited access to some of these newer models as well. So we are in the ChatGPT interface right here. Pretty straightforward. If you haven't been here, you can see right here, there's simple things it can do right off the bat if it's your first time in here. And you can see right here, it's just a simple box. And we're just going to type in something really simple. Now, I have this paper clip here, which means as part of the paid subscription, it can analyze this data. So that being said, we're going to go back to our webinar folder here. Excuse me. Let's see here. Apologize. I have this up. Find this here. It's in the WSI folder. Down here in webinar, I got this special document right here. And this is our MI forecast. That's that economic forecast that we were looking at. That barn burner of a read about the economy in Michigan. And so that came out like a little bit towards last year. And like I said, we have to give a speech on that in just about 10 minutes. So we've given the document to ChatGPT, and now we're going to just ask it a simple prompt. Write me a 5-minute speech on this white paper. All right. So we've got our document. We've got what we call a 0-shot prompt, right? We're not doing anything to it. We're just throwing it in there. And we're going to see what kind of results we get out of ChatGPT. And so already you can start to see it's formulating a speech. But we didn't give it any of those details that we came up with in our prompt engineering prompt example. So what we really have here is ChatGPT guessing what its next word is and doing very well. Obviously, it read the document, and it's kind of laying it all out in a nice speech. Now, what we have here is a speech and probably pretty accurate. Of course, I would tell you right off the bat, no matter what AI gives you, always good to put human eyeballs. In fact, always good to put a couple pairs of human eyeballs on it, just because you need to make sure that, at the end of the day, you're accurate and you're doing things the right way. So as you can see here, we have this long speech. This is a good 5-minute speech. I can tell by the copy it's a little over 5 minutes. But there's some statistics in here, some positives, some negatives, a conclusion. Not so bad. But what we have here mostly is just a speech. And it's something that essentially you would put into a teleprompter, right? This is how you would want to read it from a teleprompter, because if this was sitting in front of you and you're reading it off a piece of paper in 10 minutes, you'd say, well, I only had 10 minutes. So what we want to do is we have this speech, and this was off a 0-shot prompt. We're going to come back and try it again this time. But this time we're going to use our awesome prompt that we all came up with. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this prompt right here. This time we're going to paste in our prompt that we just talked about. All those details that we worked through for the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. So all that's in here now is a prompt. It has our document. Let's see if we get a different result than we did with our 0-shot prompt. So it already knows we have an audience. It's writing it according to our output parameters. We have our hook. We're driving through Michigan in January thinking, wow, this isn't too bad. Just as we're about to feel really good about clear roads ahead, boom, a blizzard comes out of nowhere. You're sliding around trying to get through it. If this sounds familiar, well, that's a lot like Michigan's economic forecast. Everything looks fine, but if we're not careful, we could get blindsided by the next storm. That's an excellent hook and a great way to get your audience already into what you're talking about. That zero shot prompt didn't quite have that luxury. It just sort of said, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we find ourselves." It was it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it, but this has a little panache to it now. So we train, just like navigating those icy roads today, we're going to make a determination on how XYZ blow molding, it knows who we are, weathers the economic challenges. So already we have a much better speech. We've already got our audience engaged talking to the board because we've got a creative story, all simply from the ideas we had when we were generating our. We'll run through this real quick. Act one, setting the scene, about a minute and a half, talks about key statistics that it pulled right out of the document there. Unexpected, our growth rate or our unemployment rate right there. So all these wonderful statistics and facts that came out of that document are now embedded into our speech. You could copy and paste this onto a slideshow, onto a Word document, however you want to do it, read it right off your computer if you needed to. We can actually get this exported as a Word document at the end as well. Plus we asked for a slideshow. We'll see if we can get that. So that being said, Act 2, complications. This talks about the challenges that Michigan was facing economically, supply chain volatilities, financing, those kind of things, manufacturing having its ups and downs. And then finally, a path forward for XYZ blow molding company, right? This is how we succeed. So we're telling a great story, keeping people engaged. This is already so much better than that zero shot prompt that we started with a few moments ago, just getting a 5-minute teleprompter speech. Now we have structure. We have the ability to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more calm in our presentation. And, the George Clooney thing, I think, sometimes I just think of an example of somebody I wanted to talk like. Sometimes I say, write this in the style of Kevin Hart, and you can't not hear Kevin Hart's voice in your head when ChatGPT spits out some of its results. And so, like I said, it's just a wonderful thing, putting your prompt together, organizing it, telling it how you want your results to come out. And once you see that, you're really in a good spot to get more out of ChatGPT and AI the first time and spend less time doing it. Because if you have spent some time here, sometimes you can get into spending way too much time trying to get a prompt when you could have just done the task yourself at some point. And maybe some of you have experienced that. So, and then we even have a little reassurance and a call to action, a little bit of fear to strike into the board, but that vision and focus that we're really needing. And look, we even have a slide deck design right here. So tells us, here's how you put the first slide together, the second, third, fourth, closing slide, if you want to throw that together. And we could probably even get ChatGPT to try to make us a slideshow for this. It has those capabilities to use other plugins and other programs within itself, what we call other modals. Multimodal is what it's called actually, when it has to use different sorts of apps to be able to accomplish a task. Well, if we wanted to try to get it to make the slideshow, I couldn't promise you that it would do it, but I feel reasonably confident that we could try to get it to create that slideshow in a PowerPoint presentation deck, which is kind of cool. We just put it in Google or use it for the presentation. The quality of creating that stuff yet, I'm not over the top about, but I still think it's pretty remarkable. And I think that's something that in the next few months, next year or so, these are tasks that ChatGPT and other large language models are going to be able to handle pretty well. So not so bad. We have a pretty good speech that came out of our prompt. And like I said, really the idea was to show you the difference between using a zero shot prompt and just saying, write a 5-minute speech on this paper, and giving it parameters and output and examples of what we want. And of course, we could go back and fine tune this, change some points if we wanted to, add a little more wit or humor in certain places simply by just saying, can we add a few George Clooney dry jokes to the speech? And so we'll get a little bit of an upline, right? So, or excuse me, we'll get an update on our outline. And I try to read this in George Clooney's voice. Yeah, So here's a joke. Turns out the great resignation is now the where did everyone go? Dry smirk. So it's writing jokes for us now too. All again, part of that fine tuning, that last kind of element we talked about when we were going through things. Like I said, once you get through that first result of generative AI, which is our speech here, we can go back and start fine tuning it and really dive down into the examples. Listen, ChatGPT isn't going to do everything for you. I think my best advice for a lot of people is that use this as a generator, right? This is how we get started and build a base for us to be able to accomplish future tasks. So that being said, I'm actually very happy with how this turned out. I would give this speech to a board tomorrow, and I feel very, very comfortable and confident in being able to be successful with that task that told us that we had to create a speech in about 5 minutes or so. So speaking of time, we're going to keep moving along. We're about halfway through, or excuse me, half an hour into this. And so we're kind of getting to a really good spot right here. A couple of last key points about prompting. One, if you're having trouble coming up with a prompt, ask ChatGPT, say, how would you create a solid, well-engineered prompt to be able to do this? And ask it, and it will give you the prompt to prompt itself. If you're using it every day and using the same tasks every day, make sure you save those prompts somewhere on your computer so you're not having to retype them all the time. And always, while we were detailed in our prompt, we weren't overly complicated, right? Like we didn't say, I want George Clooney to sound like this with a little bit of tone of this and a tone of this. We just said, simple results. So keep it simplistic without getting too overcomplicated or specific. And some of these things I could spend hours showing you on how ChatGPT does this, but ChatGPT and similar programs still work best utilizing and outputting text. Yes, they can make images. Yes, they can do all kinds of wild things, but text and anything you can imagine with text is really where ChatGPT really earns its money. You can create images, you can analyze documents. We just saw that. You can produce sounds, you can write computer code, and you can create customized GPTs or apps that can perform specific tasks. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. In addition to ChatGPT, just wanted to bring to your attention, there are other models that do this as well. Some are built and powered by ChatGPT. Others are programs and proprietary on their own. But some of these other ones you may hear about over the course of the next year or two, they're already coming online. Some of them are already successful. You have Microsoft Copilot, which you may already see on your computer. Claude is done by a company called Anthropic. It's a very popular LLM service as well. Gemini is done by Google, and Perplexity has the ability to really scour the internet to include that into a lot of your searches. So there are other programs and things like that that are out there, but I still think ChatGPT is the king of this. So paid GPT users can create custom applications within ChatGPT itself, and actually they can move it out of ChatGPT with a little help from some coding and some back-end stuff that IT and web guys can put together. But essentially, you can build these in ChatGPT and just go into ChatGPT and use them. And they're available for free for all users. So if you have a free account, you can use these GPTs. Paid users get more usage, obviously, but only paid users can build the GPTs. So what we're going to do is bump out of this for a second. I'm going to show you just a few that we use here at WSI that we've kind of created through the course of the year and kind of what makes each one of them special. So these are 3 GPTs. I'm going to try to get through this in about 5-6 minutes. We'll leave a little time at the end for questions. So GPTs we use here at WSI are Handbook Genie. Now, we talked about LLMs. What if you could train ChatGPT to just know the things you tell it to know? For example, our WSI Handbook Genie, and this is how we create these, by the way. We have this configuration here. We give it some instructions, kind of a nice engineered prompt right there, like you see. But down here, we have the WSI Employee Handbook. So any answers ChatGPT is going to give us is coming directly from this handbook first and foremost. So think about this for your job. Do you have training manuals? Do you have orientations? Do you have any kind of document that you have, somebody might have interactive questions with, this is already ready to go. So that being said, if we were sitting here with the Handbook Genie, I have a question about WSI. How many vacation days do I get at WSI? See, it's talking about some of the highlights in the book. Well, how many vacation days do I get? Let's ask. So there's no way it's going to search the internet and find this information. The only way it's going to know it is by searching that document, the handbook that we uploaded. And here you go. At WSI, you get 3 weeks of paid vacation when you're hired, 4 weeks after 5 years, and 10 years or beyond, you get unlimited PTO. So it's answering questions directly out of our handbook. Think about all the documents you could put in there, the ways you could get people to interact with this program. Pretty cool. Our next one is called the TA First Interview Screener. If you're interviewing people, sometimes you've got hundreds of people to interview. Keeping track of them all can be a lot. We do a lot of Google interviews, and one of the things we do is we get transcripts of those interviews. And so if I had when I record that, I get a transcript, and here's me interviewing somebody. It's basically the transcript sent from Google. And all I'm going to do is give it the document. It's going to give me two responses here, trying to tell me which one I want. But do you see how it summarized that document already for me? Here are the answers. Here are the questions. It's a perfect transcript of how things went for us. And I like this response much better. So I'm gonna, yeah, it's gonna ask me. So again, we're getting down to it, but this is really, like I said, a great summary. So now we're able to summarize candidates, and we can take this and store it as a Word document. We can put it into multiple different files. Pretty cool stuff. And so that's just a GPT that handles transcripts and is able to analyze them for us. And then finally, our translator. This is something that we've had to use quite a bit lately because we have more Hispanic workers, and so we try to upload a document that may be our normal. This is a WSI employee recognition guide, and essentially, it's going to take this document and translate it into conversational Spanish. We could certainly copy and paste that onto a new document. So these are just normal everyday tools that we've gone into and created by creating a prompt. And these programs just run on that task. That's what they're programmed to do. And so as you can see here, we're just kicking right through. Pretty awesome. And that entire document that we had for WSI now we have in Spanish. And we have a lot of Spanish speaking people here at WSI, and they've looked at these documents and they've, given it the big thumbs up and verified. So that's just a quick example of some of the things that GPT can do outside of just, working through an email or working through text. So always a lot of fun. If you're a paid user, you can create your own. If you're free, you certainly should go into the GPT store, or app store as we call it, and play with some of them. So like I said earlier, think about some of those other tools you use every single day. What could you train a GPT model on? Start with everyday tasks you're required to complete, maybe require the same thought, the same analysis week to week. And that'll be your first step to building a GPT. So, like I said, you can put those out there for global use and maybe make the next $1 billion. Who knows? One of the questions I get here, working with AI integration is AI going to replace me? And I answer honestly to most people. I say, yeah, maybe. Um, it's not going to replace you, but someone with the skill set to use AI to create, to organize, to be more efficient, they could be the one to replace you. So that's what you're really watching out for the most part. But the chances are is you're here, right? So I feel like you're going to be that person who has those abilities. AI is designed as a tool. It's designed to enhance what you do and your performance and abilities. And I can tell you firsthand, it's one of those things that I'm a guy with a million ideas. It's nice to have these little assistants and little sort of bots running around able to handle some of these tasks and see me through to completion. So again, it's not sorcery. It's just simple math, complicated math, actually, really complicated math that sucks up a lot of energy, but pretty cool with what it does. Creating detailed formulaic prompts like we talked about here today, it's going to get you the results you desire. And that paid version of ChatGPT worth the $20 a month for a myriad of reasons. If we even just have one account here at WSI and we share it, you can get enterprise accounts and business accounts as well. I even pay for a personal account because I use it so much. So that being said, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We want to have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, we would love to be able to have you guys type those into the chat, and be happy to answer them with the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have remaining here today. Because I could talk about this all day and feel like it's 45 minutes. That's really flown by. So if you do have a chat, feel free to raise your hand or mute yourself, or you can just type it into the chat box there on the side, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. And if we don't get to it here in the next few moments, I'll certainly follow up and make sure that we answer all those questions for you as well. So hopefully today you had some pretty good questions. Let's see, questions to QA, not chats. Yeah, I think I said to you can put them in the QA too. I don't have any open questions, so yeah. I think we saw a hand raised. Did we? You have a question? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to ask. I'll raise my own hand. I'll ask a question here. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate that. People have been asking me, is this something that, we should be worried about? Like, is the end near? And I keep telling people, like, this is one of those things that is maybe at some point electricity, the internet, and you know, artificial intelligence. These are going to be really the three biggest inventions of our time. I'm continually thinking of ways to use text to be able to do what I want. Since we don't have quite, I don't think we have any questions coming up here. I wanted to show you real quick, just on my phone, the new voice system on ChatGPT 4. So real quick, we have a GPT I created called the Sales Objector, and this is for our sales team. And essentially, say, what is your objection to using WSI services? And there we go.
Hey there. Like you started a message, but didn't finish.
Let me try this one. Tell me what your objections are to using WSI services. We're going to get a response. And she's talking to me. I'm going to bring this back into voice in just a second. So everything that ChatGPT types out to you on your mobile device, you can certainly use in voice as well. Those are all very solid objections, but I would tell you that one of the great things we do is hire people who are really the right fit for the job. We want the right person in the right seat. I'd be having some trouble with this today, but I would encourage you, even on your mobile device, to use the ChatGPT function. So, are there any objections? Apparently, my YouTube isn't working there. Apparently, it's not working here. I apologize, but that was, I would encourage you to use the voice version of ChatGPT as well. Put it on your mobile device. Take it where you go. You can go to Home Depot and say, how do I, accomplish this task or this task? How many, square bricks do I need to be able to build this retaining wall? And it'll be able to tell you most of those things and calculate it for you. I've had a lot of that. Use it to plan vacations. I use it to, write stories and movies and so much more. And that's just the tech side of things. So again, we want to thank you guys for joining us here today. We're looking forward to doing more of these and taking, ChatGPT and other AI tools to the next level. So as we do more of these, we'd love to have all of you back for more training. But I feel like hopefully if you're new to ChatGPT, today is a day that's kind of puts you back in the running and gunning of being able to be caught up with AI. I mean, essentially that's it. Don't feel like the train has left the station. You guys are still on it. And now you're up to speed. In fact, I feel like most of the times when you walk into the room now and you talk about ChatGPT or Open AI, I feel like you'll probably be one of the people who have maybe the best informed ideas in the room and you'll know how it works. Maybe you keep that a secret. Maybe you don't. Sometimes it's fun to just be like, I don't know how it does it. It's just magic. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll be sending out this deck as well if you don't have access to it. So you can use these simple tasks to be able to prompt engineer your way to success in ChatGPT as well. So thank you so much for joining us and have yourselves a great afternoon.